Today we're going to be installing the Code 7 bed system in a Sprinter 170. So to get started, find your floor spanner plate. I'm going to point out that there are two square holes next to each other at the front and another two square holes next to each other at the back. Locate those two holes, and what we're going to just first do is prep out some of the hardware on here using these flathead carriage bolts. Orient the floor spanner in the orientation where it's going to sit on this wall. You can identify the hump of the wheel well right here. The short end is going to face forward. So starting at the front, we're going to take our flathead carriage bolt, we're going to run it from the back out to the front, and I'm just going to temporarily hold that in place with one of these 5/16 lock nuts. Do this on both square holes, and then we're going to repeat this process at the back pair of holes. Again, running from the back out through the front. And what that's going to leave us with is a stud to mount our other components to once this is bolted to the wall of the van. Okay, just like that. It's okay if these are loose. You don't have to tighten these down at this moment. This is just to keep them captive so that they don't fall out while we're moving around into the next steps. So for the next process, you can set this to the side. We don't need this yet. What we're going to do now is we're going to prep the mounting surface of the van. So this spanner plate, if you choose, you can use this as a bit of a reference or guide. It's going to end up sitting in place right like that. And you'll notice that each of these mounting holes is going to align with the factory existing mounting holes on the van itself. So once you have a visual reference on which holes we're going to be working with, using the mounting plate as your reference, we no longer need this and we can set it to the side. And what you're going to find is what we're actually doing is we're going to be working with every one of those holes all the way along the bottom. Now, these holes are a little too small to accept the hardware that we're going to be using. We're working with these rivet nuts. These are 1/4-inch rivet nuts. And so we actually need to open and enlarge each one of these holes slightly to 3/8 of an inch. That will allow this rivet nut to go in there, and then we can set that. If you don't own a rivet nut setting tool, I can show you an example of that. What we're going to be doing today is using a pneumatic version. And so depending on your access to tools, more than likely, just grab yourself a very inexpensive rivet nut setting tool. They sell them at Amazon, Harbor Freight, all kinds of online retailers. So first step, let's drill out each one of these holes so that it can accept this rivet nut. I'm using a step bit to do this. You could use a 3/8 drill bit, but a step bit is nice because it won't run the drill bit through if it were to catch and damage the outside of the van. So we'll start at the back and we'll just work our way forward. Okay, now to install these rivet nuts, more than likely you're going to be working with a tool like this. This is the Astro 1450. There's a whole lot of manufacturers for these rivet nut setting tools. Find one that works for you. I mentioned the Astro simply because we've worked with them in the past and have had really good luck with these tools, and they're pretty affordable. The rivet nut just threads onto the end, and then you set them manually with the lever arms. Today, just to speed up the process here, we're going to be working with our pneumatic version. We know realistically, most people are not going to have a pneumatic rivet nut setting gun at their disposal. If you do, great, but we don't have very many, and even something as simple as just using 2 wrenches with a bolt, you can also accomplish the same thing. So find a tool that works for you, and then we're just going to go one by one, and we're going to set a rivet in each one of these holes that we've enlarged. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. We now have all of our rivet nuts set, and we're ready to install the floor spanner plate. So let's bring our floor spanner plate right in here, and we're going to, if you have these rubber wheelhouse covers, We're just going to set it right behind the flange on that rubber so that it's directly against the metal of the van. Now, we're just going to simply go one by one, and we're going to install our button head screws through the hole in the mounting flange of the floor spanner plate into the rib nuts we just set. So let me go ahead and do that. I am going to go through the process of putting some Loctite onto each one of the threads of the bolts that we're installing. At this stage, just leave these loose or finger tight so that we have some ability to adjust them. We want to get them all in and started before we actually go through and tighten any of them. Okay, I've now got all my bolts started loosely. I'm going to adjust this plate so that I'm nice and centered. Each one of the bolts inside of their holes, try to get it as centered as you can. And then from there, we can go ahead and zip these down tight. Our floor spanner plate is now installed. What you'll notice is the studs sticking through from those flathead carriage bolts. They should be nice and snug, and you should see the shoulder, the square shoulder of that carriage bolt coming through the plate. If the carriage bolt is turned and it ends up to where it's not aligned with the square hole in the spanner plate, you might just need to twist it enough that it can go ahead and pop on through. So at this point, just do a quick visual inspection and just make sure that all of these are all the way through. All right, looks good. Next step, we're going to go up to the roof and we're going to install our roof rib saddles. These saddles are going to straddle right over the top of the existing roof ribs in the van, and you'll notice that the holes on the roof rib, at least on the bottom here, are going to align with factory holes in the van's roof rib itself. So what we're going to do is we're going to locate this outermost, closest to the wall hole, and we're going to align it with the existing hole in the van's sheet metal, and we're going to use a 1/4 inch rivet, pop rivet, to set that and attach it to the rib itself. Now, to do that, we're working with 1/4 inch rivets. So you have a couple of options. The most common is going to be a tool like this. This is the Astro 1423. We're not sponsored by them, but we use them just like the last tool, and we've had good luck. And so if you want a manual rivet setting tool, just make sure you find one that is capable of handling 1/4 inch rivets. So this is a great one for that. Nice short arms, so that if you're in a tight spot, you can also still operate it. Today, we're going to be using the Astro pneumatic version. So we're just going to put one of these rivets right in here, and we're going to go ahead and get this first rib saddle up and into place. Just aligning this back hole, push this rivet right into place. It may be a little snug. Don't be afraid to give it some pressure, to go ahead and push on through, or you can clear that hole with a drill bit if you need to. So, got that aligned. And I'll go ahead and set that rivet. I'm going to repeat this process on the next 2 ribs so that we have all 3 up here, and then we'll do the next step. So let me go ahead and get that part started. Okay, we've got each of these 3 roof rib saddles up and in place. I will make a note, since I didn't mention it earlier, the factory wiring harness does run right along this corner, and you will need to pull the little clip fasteners out of the rear hole location, because that is the hole we will be using for these rivets. Now, with the saddles in place, we need to go ahead and finish setting the rest of the rivets. On the side of these saddles, you'll notice there's another hole, set of holes. There's 3 holes on each side. And what we're going to do is we're going to set a rivet in the front one and the back one. But the holes in the van do not exist. And so I'm using a 1/4 inch drill bit to go ahead and make those holes in the van. And I'm using the roof rib saddle as my guide on where to drill. So I'm just going to come in here, making sure it's pushed up tight against the metal of the van where it needs to be. And I'm going to use this front hole to guide the placement of my drill bit. So I'll go ahead and drill this. And then I'm going to do the back one as well. Same thing on the opposite side. And now we're going to go ahead and set these rivets in place. Okay, that's what it should look like when it's done. So we'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 total pop rivets in each roof saddle. So now I'm going to repeat this process on the other 2 ribs, and then when we're done, we can move on to the next step. So let me go ahead and finish that part now. Now, when we get to this rear rib, the amount of space we have between the rib and the rear D-pillar is pretty limited. It's so tight that you most likely are not going to be able to get your drill in here to drill out the rear facing side of the saddle. And that's okay. If you happen to have a 90-degree drill or tools that can get you into this tight spot, feel free to do that, but we often will not do that back side. You'll still have sufficient strength just using the 2 on the forward facing side and the 1 that we put in the bottom to begin with. If those are the only ones you can put in, that is totally fine. Okay, now that we have our roof rib saddles all riveted into place, we're ready to install the roof spanner plate. There'll be 2 of these plates that look very similar. The way to identify you have the correct one is what you're looking for, a few of the geometrical features on here. These little dips, little notches that you see cut out here, those will face the wall, and you want the one that will have the threaded inserts facing the sky, facing the ceiling. And what you'll notice is the back will only have 2 of these threaded inserts, and the front will have a set of 4. So you will know you will have the right orientation when you can hold these notches towards the wall, your threaded inserts are facing up, and the rear only has that pair in the back. So now let's just start right here in the center rib. You'll find a slot in your roof saddle. Make sure that you clear any existing wires out of your way. Do not pinch any wires between these 2 parts when you're putting them together. Using a 5/16 bolt with a flat washer and some thread locker, go ahead and thread the center location hand tight. And we're going to leave this loose at this point. So with the center bolt now holding the roof spanner in place, we're going to take our next bolt, and we're going to do the same thing in the front position. Okay? Now, what you're looking for here is we want to be able to center the slot front and back with the threaded insert on the rear roof rib. If you find that the roof rib just simply does not sit in the center of that slot, you can attempt to move your roof spanner front or back to achieve that center. But these roof ribs vary from van to van. So when Mercedes installs them, sometimes they're a little off, and that will actually cause this to drift a little bit, and it's why we provide slotted holes. So you've got enough adjustment here that you can favor one way or the other. But if you're a little off center on one of these holes, that's okay. We've already designed and anticipated that. So as long as it is lined up enough that you can get a bolt in it, you should be good. Now, this back one's a little weird because we don't want to put a bolt in this until we are actually installing the vertical rail for the bed system, because this particular bolt location is going to be shared. It's going to go through the vertical rail mounting flange, through the roof spanner plate, and into that threaded insert from the roof rib. So we're going to do that all in one motion, but what I'm doing now is just sighting to make sure we're approximately lined up where I want us. And then I'm just going to set these snug. That way, everything's pretty much in alignment and ready to go when we bring our rail in. Okay, so right before we install the vertical rail, we want to remove the nuts that we temporarily put onto each of those carriage bolt studs on the floor spanner plate right before we install this. So I'm just going to remove these nuts down here at the bottom, exposing those threads, because that is where the vertical rail is going to mount at the bottom. So here's our vertical rail. I'm just going to bring this into position. You can go ahead and set this up on those little slotted holes in the bottom flange of the vertical rail pillar. You'll find those two slotted holes. Those can just go ahead and be put over those two studs coming out of the wall, and that's going to help hold this up into position while we bolt it into place up here at the roof spanner. So what you want to do is start with this left side or rear side bolt. That'll help you get everything lined up. And as usual, we're not going to tighten any of these yet until everything is attached, at least loosely and hand tight. That's going to make sure that everything can thread in without binding. Okay. And now, this right side that we were talking about, one bolt straight up and through both the vertical rail and the roof spanner plate. If you need to lift up on the roof rail, you can do that, and that will take any of the slack out. It should allow you to get enough reach on the bolt that you can go ahead and get that all the way up. Now this is completely supported by the roof. You'll notice that the bottom popped off. That's totally fine. I'm just going to slide it back. You could temporarily put a nut on here to keep it on if you'd like, but that's going to be our very next step, is putting the hardware down at the bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and let it swing, just hang free. That's totally fine. And from this point, we can go ahead and tighten these down. Okay, and once again, just make sure that all your wireways are nice and clear, and they're not being pinched by any of the components we just installed. Everything looks good here. Okay, so we're down here at the bottom of the vertical rail. We're just going to slide that vertical rail, those two slotted holes, up and over the studs sticking out of the floor spanner plate. We're going to use a flat washer, followed by our lock nut on both of these studs. And then we're going to go ahead and tighten these in position. Okay, same process as before. We're going to just simply lift this rail into place. I'm going to set it on the studs at the floor, and then we're going to bolt up into all four bolt locations that have these threaded inserts on the roof spanner plate. So start by removing those temporary nuts that we had in place. Expose those studs so we can use them. Slide those slotted holes over the studs, and then take one of your bolts and washer and thread these in by hand. And let's get all four started here as well. Once you've got them all started, now we can go ahead and cinch these down tight. And just like before, we're going to bolt these down, but you may find you need to roll the lip of this rubber wheel well cover over, just so that the vertical rail can mount flush against the floor spanner in such a way that that rubber is not pinched in between. So I've got this rolled out of the way, and I'm just going to use my washer and my lock nut. Started by hand. Now I'm going to tighten it down. All right, now lastly, we want to make sure that these two rails remain parallel to each other vertically, meaning we want the tops, the spacing between them at the top, to be the same at the bottom. So we're just going to start by measuring from back to front. I'm at 54 and 1/8 at the bottom, 54 and 1/8. So it actually worked out perfect for me this time. If you find that yours varies, if it's widening or narrowing here at the bottom, whatever the top is should be your reference. We're going to make the bottom match the top. Take that measurement, come down here, and if you find you need to adjust it, we're simply going to loosen these nuts and just give it a tap one way or the other to take out some of that slack and then tighten it back into position. And you can do the same thing on both rails to have an additive adjustment. If they're too wide, you can bring both of these rails in. There's just enough adjustment down in those slots that should get you really, really close. Or you might get lucky just like this one, and it works out perfectly right on the first go. Now that we have this last rail installed, this system on the driver's side is complete. The process for the passenger side is exactly the same. So everything we just went through, we're just going to mirror it on the other side, and then your system will be completed.